Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us on today. Please continue to introduce yourselves in the chat if you have not, and if you're just arriving, we invite you to do so. Also, use the chat feature to be able to put any questions that you all may have to our presenters on today, as well as if you have any comments, we ask that you place them inside of the chat box as well. So I would like to introduce to you all our Godot STEM STEAM team. We have Mrs. Megan McFerrin and Miss Felicia Colors. They serve as our statewide specialists. And we also have our regional specialist, Mrs. Allison Morgan, who served the 1st District RESA, and you have myself, and I support the educators in the Southwest Georgia RESA. Please follow us on our various social media platforms. So any takeaways, great things that you all are learning in these sessions, we ask that you please share them on our various media platforms. And if you are seeking for any additional information, resources that we may have, whether it is for certification or you're just searching for different various resources on STEM and STEAM, please go to our webpage at stemgeorgia.org. If you have not done so already, we ask that you join our STEM STEAM community. It is a great opportunity to network with other educators who are on similar journeys, such as yourself. And we have some great virtual specialists who have been giving us various resources in virtual professional learning. You all can go and access that information on our Godot STEM STEAM community. So please join this community today. And at this time, our session for today is STEAM and the Makerspace movement. I would like to say that having a makers, you are not required for a certification, STEAM certification, to have a makerspace. But I want you all to definitely go through this session with an open mind and grab some great ideas that you all are about to hear from one of our extraordinary virtual specialists, Mrs. Courtney Bryant, who is currently serving as the Director of Fine Arts and STEAM at Drew Academy. So at this time, I'm going to turn this session over to Courtney. And Courtney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Let me unmute myself. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Yes, Ms. Brown is correct. Having a makerspace is not necessary, but I'm going to talk about the importance today of thinking about it in terms of a complement to the hands-on instruction that happens with STEAM. So Colleen and I are going to introduce ourselves. So Ms. Brown just introduced me. I'm the Director of Fine Arts and STEAM at Drew Charter School in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in this capacity for several years, but before that, I was the engineering teacher at Drew. And before that, I've taught a variety of things, including animation and visual arts. So I'm going to let Colleen introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Colleen Jordan. I'm the Makerspace Manager at Drew Charter. Prior to working at Drew, I was a product designer and I worked at Seismic as one of their innovators in residence. I've been working at Drew for 2 years now as the Makerspace Manager, and I work a lot with mostly the engineering classes, but I work with all of the other classes as well, finding ways to bring hands-on projects into the classroom.
Awesome. So before we get any further, I wanted to talk a little bit about Drew so that people who are unfamiliar with us have a little bit of background information and context to position this discussion. We are part of the Atlanta Public School System. We're a Title I school. We serve primarily the East Lake community. although we are lottery based, so we pull from outside of our neighborhood as well. We self-identified as STEAM in 2010, really before we understood what that meant. And we added project-based learning to the equation in 2012. Since then, we've been working on the marriage of those two and the complement of those two, and really thinking about how to really invest in our infrastructure to support both of those programmatic curriculum structures. So we have a little bit under 2,000 students in our pipeline total from pre-K through 12th grade. We're between two buildings, so we have an elementary campus and then a junior and senior academy campus. We have a very limited space and on both campuses. So I'm going to talk about that. And the reason why I wanted to foreground that a little bit is I wanted to talk a little bit about why we do Makerspace the way we do it. Because some of you guys might be in a similar situation or scenario at where you work. So before we even get started talking about Drew's situation and what led us to doing Makerspace, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own personal philosophy on this, and it's captured by this quote from the Resilient Educator. STEAM really calls on us to help students become proficient in collaboration, questioning, problem solving, and critical thinking. And our students do this through hands-on exploration. So Makerspace is one of the ideas. I think of it more as an idea in terms of an idea of space as opposed to a physical place where you go. In fact, I was part of one of the first founding groups of Decatur makers here in the Atlanta area, and it was an idea even before we had a physical location to go where tools were and that type of thing. Makerspace is more of a mentality in my mind. It's a mental space and a space for people to gather their thoughts and toss them around with other people. So exploring and brainstorming ideas in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So in a Makerspace, you can do all different types of things, and I'm gonna let Colleen talk about that as she goes through her description of what Drew's Makerspace. But I'll say from a professional concept, I consider my Makerspace community kind of a professional organization for me. It's a place where I know that I can go for help when, for example, students are working on a project and I've been called in to support and I'm not sure how to tackle the problem. I know that I can get on our listserv and I can pose the question to anyone in the group, and inevitably I'll get 5 answers back. And hopefully one of those answers works. So thinking about it in terms of a social network as well. And it's important to teach students the importance of that social network. So when it says there that STEAM is designed to help students become proficient in collaboration, that Makerspace really has a lot to do with the social aspect of it. And there are tons of articles about that and how Makerspace can help do that. Let's see here. So Makerspace at Drew. When I started at Drew many moons ago, Drew did not have a Makerspace. Nobody knew what Makerspace was. And it's something that kind of built over time. As I said, you know, I was part of this professional organization, and I started having requests from parents and students, hey, can I come and work on this project after school? Or can we build this? Can I? And I didn't even have them in my class. I taught engineering when I first got to Drew. And so I started thinking about, what if we had a Makerspace at Drew? What if we had a spot where students could come, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for a school project even, but a spot where students could feel comfortable coming and making. So we have, I hear when schools come to visit Drew to see about our place and what happens there, I hear folks say, well, we don't have room for a makerspace. Well, Drew doesn't have room for a makerspace either. And quite frankly, especially at the elementary academy, we didn't have rooms that were designed for this type of activity even. So what you're seeing here is a room that we use for engineering by day and makerspace in the evenings after school. So it's an engineering classroom, and it's a former science lab that we use for engineering and then makerspace. What that does, though, is because it's used for engineering during the daytime, our staff really don't have the ability to bring their classes there for, their meetings or whatever with the students about projects that they're working on. So we came up with another idea, which was to create STEAM trunks. And these individual STEAM trunks have different themes, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's a way to turn any classroom into a hands-on making lab where students are able to solve their project-based learning problems with hands-on equipment and tools, and really test their ideas that way. So I'm going to turn the presentation at this point over to Colleen. Before I do that, I wanted to just say that I'm sure people are adding questions in the chat, and Colleen and I will definitely answer questions. So feel free to add them there. We will address those questions. We have lots of time towards the end of the presentation for those questions. So Colleen, I'm gonna click on the link here and get you going.
Awesome. I might need you to click on since we're sharing your screen, to click on the
Yes.
page for me.
Yep. So tell me where to drive.
Okay, so this is sort of just our Makerspace page here. It's part of our overall STEAM page. So if you could scroll down, Courtney. So what is Makerspace? That might be something that all of you are asking. So we've talked about it encompasses community, it encompasses having the access to tools, it encompasses just everybody's brain base, having everybody's expertise. It's not just the equipment access, it's having the access to having people that will do classes, not just people like me that are the Makerspace managers, but bringing in any kind of expert. So I'm working with some of the high schoolers now to hopefully get them to lead some classes on things that they're an expert in. So it's just basically pooling all of those resources that everybody can provide. And if you walk into our Makerspaces at Drew, like, you will really be wowed. We've got a lot of cool stuff that we've been lucky to acquire over the past 15 years or so. We've got 3D printers, we've got a CNC, but you don't need all of those things to be a Makerspace. Really, just to get started, you've just got to have a group of people that want to start a Makerspace and are willing to contribute, and maybe a pair of scissors and some recycled plastic and cardboard. It's really all you need to get started. So if you could scroll down, Courtney. So we're lucky that we do have a pretty good supply of craft supplies, everything that you could probably need to get started, but we do rely really heavily on donations. So we're constantly asking people, like, bring in big pieces of cardboard, because our kids love cardboard engineering. Also, like, looking for like fabric all the time, something that we might need. So you don't really need to spend any money to get started. You just need to have a group of people who are committed and willing to help to get going. So at Drew, in pre-COVID times, what we would do is, after school, we would have Makerspace hours, typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they'd be for about 2 to 2.5 hours after school, sort of depending on what events were going on at the school at those times. And in the fall, we would have, I think it was twice a month, Saturday Makerspace hours, and then once a month in the spring, Saturday Makerspace hours. So making sure that we have enough opportunities for students to come in, and either they can work on their projects. A lot of kids will come in and work on science fair projects, sort of other, like last year, some third graders came in and they were laser cutting out continents, something like that. But they can also come in and work on personal projects as well. So I'd say we probably have a balance with the older students, more lean towards doing school projects, and the younger kids have been better about balancing personal and school projects. I have a group of kids that I call the Avengers that are always coming in trying to be superheroes and make things to get to be superheroes. So during COVID times, obviously we've had to transition. So now what we're doing is on Tuesdays, I have office hours where students, the Zoom link is the same every week. Students can come and ask questions and get help on their projects. And then on Thursday, we do a guided project. So this Thursday, we are doing a macrame project. And it is kind of hard to do more complicated projects online. So I'm trying to do things to sort of build on some basic skills. So past ones we've done have been using like scratch coding with the microbit. And even though students didn't have access to the microbit, we used makecode.org, so they were able to use that. And we've done some things with polymer clay and some cardboard engineering as well, because that's something the kids are a big fan of. Also on our Makerspace page here, we keep our calendar of events. If you scroll down, thanks. So you'll see we do have a few more events on the calendar right now as we're starting to open up a little bit more. So you see that we have our 2 times a week Ask a Maker for the office hours, and then our guided Makerspace activity. Coming up, I was able to work with our PTA to get funding. If anybody's heard of Kiwi Crates, I was able to get funding to do like a Kiwi Crate sort of project to distribute to our students. And I was able to get funding to make them for about 10% of our school for any student who wants them to learn that, teach them about soft circuits. So I really like this project because we're gonna be able to give them all of the tools and materials to work on this project. So it'll incorporate a little bit of sewing, a little bit of embroidery, but then also integrate some of those 5th grade skills learning about circuits, and then introduce them also to microprocessors and LEDs to make a light up stuffed animal. So we've got a big group activity coming up, and we'll be having not just the instructions online, but also doing some extra Makerspace afternoons to guide working on that project as well. Also coming up, we are doing a Black Lives Matter mural at our school, and we're coordinating that with our arts and STEAM classes as well.
Awesome. Also on this page, Colleen may talk about it a little bit later, but there's some project ideas, things that she's done, and other resources here. Let's see here. Let's go back. Here we go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about are our mobile makerspaces, and these are what we commonly refer to as STEAM trunks at Drew. They are trunks that you can check out. Let's go back one more time. Try clicking on, there we go. They are trunks that you can check out and have come to your class, delivered to your class, and you can check out as many as you would like. And each one has a theme that is helpful to making. Specifically, I'll talk about several of the options here. We have an arts and crafts trunk. I brought in many of our enrichment teachers and asked those teachers, what do the core teachers come and ask you for? What do they come and borrow from you? And that's where we started with our trunk idea, putting together things that are commonly asked for. Additionally, thinking about your resources at a school in a different way. I've worked at several schools where you could walk into any teacher's classroom and there might be in that classroom 15 packs of old construction paper that are probably 10 years old. And you go into the next classroom and there's no construction paper, but maybe there are glue bottles. So thinking about it in terms of what if we put all of the materials that people might need in one location, we pulled from that and sent it to the location that it needed to go on any given day. So one of the things you can find on our website that might be helpful are the supply lists for each of the trunks. So you can download that and take a look to see what we've put on the trunks to be able to send them out. We also have a construction trunk. So on this trunk, you'll have, so the top one has things like glue guns, scissors, paintbrushes, cardboard, hot glue gun. Say that again, Colleen?
Googly eyes.
Googly eyes, pipe cleaners, all that kind of stuff. Yarn, and the construction trunk has all different types of things like drills, screwdrivers, screws, nails, hammers, saws, hand saws, and then wood scraps that are left over from other bigger projects that we have going on at the school. 3D printer trunks are also available for staff to check out. We had a few 3D printers floating around the building at the time we came up with the idea to do this, but one 3D printer in a class is not enough to really make a dent in a whole class of projects. It would take forever to print out a whole class of projects with one 3D printer. Additionally, maintaining the 3D printers is problematic when they're spread out all over the building. So this is a helpful thing to have them in one location, and they can go to the room where they're needed, and the support staff who help to support this are able to know where they are and know how to fix them at any given time, which is also pretty helpful.
And these trunks are our most commonly checked out trunks as well.
Yes, and we found that posting training modules on our website has also been helpful for staff, so that if they're having problems with it, they know where to go, where to pick up on how to learn how to do some of this stuff that's highly technical. We have an electronics trunk, and this particular trunk has things like batteries, LEDs, buzzers, wire, soldering irons, so that our staff, when they are working on circuits or electromagnets or the various different projects that they do, they have a way to check it out and actually experiment with some of those things hands-on with the students. We worked with Georgia Tech to create the robotics trunk, and this particular trunk has some of the same things that are on the electronics trunk, but it also has a computer, a little brain that's controlled by the computer that can cause things to move. And so these robotics parts are used by various different grade levels, from kindergarten all the way to 11th grade. I've seen them pulled out and used. Here, Oliver's using it to program his robot to tell the legend of Sleepy Hollow in a literature class.
The nice thing about the hummingbirds, oh, sorry, can I?
Go ahead, Colleen.
The nice thing about the hummingbirds too is usually the hummingbird cart will get checked out along with the arts and crafts trunk. So the hummingbird, if anyone's heard of an Arduino, it's basically an easy to use platform for using Arduino coding, where the kids can program on Scratch, which a lot of them will be familiar with at Drew, but some of your students might be familiar with it as well. But being able to combine that easily with the arts and crafts trunk makes it so kids are kind of like more likely to personalize their projects, and they're kind of able to get that hands-on, like tactile feel to, you know, really get into it and be learning how to use the Arduinos.
Yes. We have the Coding Gears and Games trunk, which is mostly for the younger students. So it has like logic puzzles on it, but it also has everything from Legos to Connects to Bebot robots, a variety of different things that you can check out and then show how coding and game logic works. We have, go ahead, Colleen, I'm sorry.
We've also got our Dash and Dot robots. Some of you might have seen those before. And also we even have some of these little games that can be used with the circuit kits, where you learn sort of the basics of using a circuit, and you can kind of learn that logic of why you'd want to put a resistor where you'd want it. So it's really great that it's hands-on like that.
Additionally, we have VR headsets for staff to take students on a virtual field trip, a journey to explore something in particular. And we have a couple of other ones that we've found over time are helpful to have. We have a Tinker Yard that's a STEAM playground that requires special materials like the pinballs for the pinball machine that they can change out, so they can check out those materials to go out and use them in the Tinker Yard. We have a mobile puppet show because this is one of the things we realized that a lot of teachers were creating puppets and telling stories, and this is something that one of the teachers actually created and added to the carts. In fact, that's an excellent point here. Many of these trunks that were created were funded through grants individually. We started initially with really only the arts and crafts trunk and then built from there. So and then in some cases, like the coding, gears, and games trunk and the VR headset, both of those were funded by teachers going out and securing the funding and then saying, I don't need to keep all this stuff in my room and hold it to myself. I think because we had proven concept on some of the other trunks and teachers saw them circulating in the building and saw how it worked, they felt comfortable sharing their resources with each other. The OutTeach science kits are another example of that, making the resources available to all of the staff in the building for the students to check out, to do their work and do their projects. So that's an example of the STEAM trunks and how they, the different types that we have. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was how you check out a STEAM trunk. So the first thing on that same website, there's a tab for the calendar. So you go there and see whether the trunk is available, and you can see all of the trunks that are checked out on that day. And then you can choose one, choose the day that you want to have it, and create a request. So your request form you would fill out to Google form. So we're using the Google Suite to help us know where the trunks are at all times and know when they're available. So I've got a couple pictures of the mobile makerspaces in use. Here's an example of a kindergartner who's getting her first opportunity to use a saw ever. And so the teachers have been trained on how to set it up so that it is safely managed there on the table. And this picture says a lot to me, and it convinces, you know, it helps me feel like we are on the right track, because when I think about this, I want all of our students to have been exposed and know that they are powerful and capable of being able to use any tool or equipment. I don't want them to ever walk into a lab as a college student and feel intimidated. And because they've had access to the resources throughout their time at Drew, and you know, the teachers are right there with them, learning alongside them how to operate, they feel like they have role models in people that are willing to learn this with them, and then coach them through how to be successful at it. So here, the kindergartners are creating Zen gardens out of wood and then adding sand into it. Here, the kindergartners are learning how to 3D print. So they're printing things for their goods and services unit that they will sell on PBL night. Now we're going to jump to 7th grade. 7th grade has used a variety of resources to make puppets. They've also used the 3D printers for this, but here's an example using materials that can be found on the arts and crafts trunk. And they're doing this for their science class. Here's a 6th grade example, and where you can see multiple STEAM trunks in use at one time. So we've got the 3D printer trunk here, the construction trunk, and the electronics trunk, all being used. The students here are, they've been studying Mars, and they are designing products that would make life on Mars easier. So they had to fully understand what Martian life would be like, and study the red planet to be able to then come up with, what product they could make that would make life easier there. So teachers are free to check out as many as they can fit, and it's quite a frequent occurrence during non-COVID times to see STEAM trunks lined up outside of a classroom, and students coming outside to get what they need and then going back in the classroom. So Colleen and I have shared a lot of information about our Makerspace and our STEAM trunks. Wanted to talk with you a little bit about getting started. You guys may already have some of these concepts off and going, and maybe doing some of it, or maybe you don't have anything happening in terms of this quite yet. But some pointers from our learned experience, because I wouldn't say that we did everything right the first time, would be to decide who's going to manage and maintain. That's a very important thing. In some schools, it might be the librarian. In other schools, it might be a specific teacher, or it might be a grade level that's maintaining the materials. But I would say starting small, so thinking about one project or one collaborator, someone who has a passion for this, and that's important. And then only with a few tools or materials. Colleen talked about that a little bit, about how you don't have to go sophisticated and have a bunch of tools when you first start out. And I think this one is key. Get equipment and materials donated as needed. And I know that some of our very first tools in our Makerspace came from a group of parents who I was approached about supporting them with the Pinewood Derby for the Cub Scout group that meets at Drew. And I said, I would be happy to help. Do you know what we could use? And so all of the parents in the group chipped in, $10, and they went collectively and purchased a bandsaw for the school. And so some of your first equipment can be donated, and that helps get you started. Writing grants for that, and that's a huge thing. Figuring out once you have the procedure together, it's a lot easier to ask for the money to support a specific project or a specific trunk. Colleen is really great about doing outreach, and so I'm going to let her talk about that a little bit on the next slide. But some things that we typically do, we offer classes in the Makerspace, and we have non-Drew people who attend our classes, and we support and share our resources with the community. We offer PD opportunities for our staff, and that's what's happening here and here. So that they can learn about, this is a group of new teachers, new to Drew, who are learning about the trunks during pre-planning. And this is a group of veteran teachers at Drew who have been around but are curious about what's happening in the Makerspace and want to know how to use some of the tools and equipment there. So we offer kind of open houses for that. I can't stress enough the importance of making connections with professional makers. So that could be your local chef, that could be somebody who designs models. In fact, I remember I met Colleen before we even knew to know each other at a Maker Faire event in Atlanta many moons ago. And so reaching out to your local craftspeople and people who design things for a living, and having them get involved with your space, because people are your strongest and most important resource. So on that note, I'm going to let Colleen talk a little bit about outreach.
At Drew, we do quarterly make nights. So we usually line these up with our quarterly PBL nights, where we're already going to have families in the building looking at their students' projects. And when we say make nights, it's typically 2 nights per quarter. So the project will be spread out over, it'll be a project that can be done in about 15 minutes. And we'll offer 2 nights that people can come in. They don't have to come in both nights to do the project. So we make projects that will line up with what we're doing with the PBL projects that quarter. So the last few ones, we've done things that are sort of electronically focused. This year for our virtual one, we did something with our lantern making. Trying to remember which ones we did last year. I can't think of them right now. I know we did a lantern making one last year. Oh, and we did one also in coordination with what one of our STEAM classes did, where there were these laser cut mix and match monsters. So I designed sort of the base template of the monster, and then the students went in and they designed like accessories and shirts and clothes to put on these little monsters. And then from that, they made pins that they could wear. So people were able to come in and make a complete project in 15 minutes. And the fifth graders were also really excited to see, you know, everybody in the school wearing pins from artwork that they had made. So we do these quarterly make nights to bring more people into the makerspace. And we also kind of remind them, we're like, hey, we're the makerspace, we're here. You liked this cool project. You should sign up so you get the emails to remind you that we have Makerspace. And we're also able to just introduce a lot of kids and families to it so that they get their eyes on it and the kids get excited and they're like, hey, I want to come to Makerspace after school. And it's sort of is great advertising for us as well to kind of remind people that we're there. And sometimes we do have people that come in, they're just like, hey, I want to use the saw, even during the make nights. So, you know, you kind of guide them like, come back during maker hours. So it's a great way to remind people what kind of cool tools that we have and what we're capable of. You know, you don't have to come in and say like build a table. You don't have to do an intimidating project. You can come in and you can make something as simple as making a pin with pre-made materials, or we've even had a kid come in and make tables and chairs before. So that's something that you can do as well. There's a big range of projects.
Exactly. And I would agree with Colleen that this is a great way to introduce the public to what a makerspace is in your community. It's interesting because we have numerous parents who actually have recognized and value this resource. We have a couple of parents who started their own Etsy business in our makerspace. And I've had schools ask me, do you encourage that? And I say yes, because our younger people seeing the adults in the community, in the space, they learn valuable tricks and kind of why this is important, and the idea that you can become an entrepreneur and sometimes you need a little kickstart. We've had kids even start businesses out of our makerspace. We had a young person who was running a 3D printing business where he was 3D printing little parts out of our makerspace. And so there's opportunities for students, and these are not things that they're doing because of a class in many cases, although there's plenty of classwork that's being done also. So it gives students the opportunity, and families and community partners the opportunity to explore the tools and learn things that maybe they didn't know before. And I wanted to talk about this guy here, and then we'll have questions. So get your questions ready. This guy, his name's Christian, and he's one of the Avengers that Colleen talked about so fondly at the beginning of the presentation. Christian started coming to Makerspace, I don't know, Colleen, how many years ago?
Well, when I came to Drew, he already was like, look, I come to Makerspace, you need to make sure there's a space for me every day. So
Exactly.
his time at the Makerspace preceded my time at Drew.
Yes, so he is an installation, if you will. He's in 5th grade now, and many of our students start coming when they're in pre-K or kindergarten, and you know, come through every year. You know, this is their spot, this is their space. Christian just this past month won first place in the state of Georgia for science fair. And this is not the first time that he's done that. He won his 3rd grade year as well. And it was, the story behind that's kind of cool. He came for a chair making workshop where he learned how to use CAD as a 3rd grader. He learned how to do it so well that he was able to create a ergonomic seat back that he was able to then test for his science fair project, because he was able to actually get it CNC'd and created out of foam. So then he had an actual product to go and test. And this is the dream of what ultimately happens. His most recent science fair project had to do with a robotic clothing folder. And so this was his brainchild to get out of work at home. And so he is coming up with ideas, and ultimately the end game here is for our students to be so interested in innovation and creating and making that they are able to secure their own patent by the time they're done. And we have had students already who have a provisional patent at the Senior Academy. So
And
go ahead, Colleen, I'm sorry.
something I want to stress is, kids don't need to be coming into the makerspace always to be productive. So I'd say Christian and his group of friends are the kids that are in there the most often. But most of the time, like, they're not sitting there playing with Lego Mindstorms. They're doing a variety of things. So, just don't imagine that kids need to always be in there necessarily playing with Scratch. Just having that time to sort of be creative and, just have like free imagination time. So for instance, they make a lot of Captain America shields, this group of kids. But then sometimes they'll go and play with Scratch afterwards. So just having that time where they're getting familiar with making stuff, playing with saws. Kids love playing with saws. Teaching them kind of how to measure stuff. I kind of feel like last year, Christian and I had a lot of conversations about, like, this is how you measure something that's larger than a ruler. Having that conversation could have helped him with making his laundry folding device here. So just having that time to play and explore and sort of do like creative hands-on play is just really important. They don't need to be constantly being productive. It's just that like hands-on free creative playtime.
And I think it's important to note that material science is happening when they're experimenting with different materials and what they can do. I consider, that playtime Colleen is talking about to be experimental time. It's time to experiment with materials and tools to find out, how things work and understand the world that you live in. And I think that's a lot about what Makerspace is. And the thing that I like best about it is a constructive way to do that, meaning that there's someone there who can safely guide them through that process. I think the thing that scares me most is a student who thinks they know how to operate something, but they don't actually know how to operate it. And so a big, something that we stress very heavily is the safe operation of the equipment in the space. So on that note, here's how to get in touch with us, as well as some ways that you can find out more about what we're doing in this arena. I am going to open it up for anybody to ask questions. So I'm looking in the chat to see whether there are any questions at this point.
Signing waivers. So what we have when all students, before they can come into the makerspace, is they have to, I make them raise their hand like a Boy Scout, and they have to, they do have to know that they have to be in there and be safe. And they also have to promise me that they're not going to fool around, and that what I say goes. And, we do actually have those things written down, but I also make them, know the seriousness of this, that, you are possibly playing with saws. Every parent signs a sort of general safety waiver, right, at the beginning of the school year, like with the school. And so, yeah, that is also kind of like keeping track of kids after school is one of our challenges. So we're kind of still perfecting our system to the front desk with the access to like the Kinderline system knows who's in the makerspace, and that's sort of something that we're constantly working on. But we do make sure that the parents know the kids are there, and that the kids know that you're in here with tools and you have to be safe. And I am working, we've gone through a few iterations of this, but working with, having a graduated approach to what tools they can use as well, for sort of safety as well. So, everybody's going to come in there and be able to use like scissors and a glue stick, but not everyone's going to be able to use the bandsaw. So some kids, I'll be like, I will cut that for you. Some students I will supervise, but maybe if it's the older, like 10th grade and up that are in the advanced engineering classes, I can use them also as supervising the younger students on the bandsaw where they've already taken the classes where they know how to be safe with that. And then there are also some tools that I'm always going to supervise kids on, like the table saw, or even just not allow them. So we do kind of have, you know, with safety, sort of have different waves and levels of what will allow everyone to use. So for the most part, like scissors and the glue gun, everybody can use, but not everyone can use a paper cutter.
We also have like stickers on the equipment that have like a hand raised if you need to ask for adult support, so that there's like graphic symbols on the equipment that indicate, you know, I need to go ask somebody before I just pick this up and try it out. And I think, you know, we have established some routines that if you violate a simple rule in the makerspace, you are not allowed to stay for the day, because there has to be a level of security in a place and safety in a place where you are operating high-powered equipment.
But for also the kids, you know, they, you know, we do kind of stress the importance of like, you know, you could get hurt, you don't want to get hurt. And in Makerspace, I think I've only had to tell kids to leave less than 5 times. And, you know, there's only been one group of kids that I've barred for a little bit longer and had to call parents. So kids are pretty good at sort of self-monitoring that and learning the safety of the situation.
Yes, and I'm taking the questions in order. Monica asked how many students are allowed to use the mobile makerspace unit at one time. We ask that the teacher is responsible for it. So the mobile unit, the teacher, you know, her or his a whole class can use it at one time. But they are responsible for making sure that all the materials get put back on and everything is returned in the condition that it was sent in. And so teachers have to sign a contract on that too. So if, for example, second grade is really they're power users, and like they in the past have checked out the trunk, and then the whole grade level comes and gets it for a period of the day. But the understanding is that the person who checked it out is ultimately the person who's responsible for it at the end of the day when it is picked up. So I think that, you know, to answer your question, there's no set number on the mobile units, how many people can use it in one day. We have it broken up so that you can check it out for a half day or a full day. And so teachers will kind of negotiate that as well. Kim, I see you asked about, do we have a STEAM curriculum that includes the makerspace, or are the projects separate? I think Colleen talked about that a little bit. We don't have specific projects that they come to the makerspace to do. Teachers themselves might have things that they want students to do, and they might send them to Makerspace after school to be able to do that, or they might send them during the school day to find out when it'll be open, or can they check out a STEAM trunk. But basically, we've had a couple teachers, like I can remember a second grade teacher from several years ago who was doing a project that needed the makerspace. She actually came and helped out in the makerspace. Fourth grade does that as well. When they have something going on in their class and they're like, I need you guys to go to makerspace, they will reach out and say, hey, look, we're bringing a large number of people to the makerspace. And if we have a large number of coming from one class or one grade level, we actually will ask the teacher, you know, to support that if it's for, you know, something they're doing in their class. So like we've had to annex the cafeteria before because we had that many students who were coming to participate in making after school. But it's teachers were able to come and help support that.
And we do have some teachers that, you know, they've been with us so long that they have started incorporating the makerspace into their projects. So for instance, kindergarten has been doing this Zen Garden project with their, what is it, with shapes and learning about how to take measurements. So what they do is like I'll give them a little introduction to like, this is a saw cuts, you need to measure this out and this is how you cut a square. And then they'll go in and then in their classroom, they will have the STEAM chunks in there. So, and then 5th grade has been pretty good about that when they do their science fair projects, is they know that they're going to be using the Makerspace. And so those teachers begin planning it in as well. And with the upper grades, they can be kind of hit or miss. And so we're trying to get them into it more. The engineering teachers in particular are really good about being like, okay, we know we're going to need time after school. And those kids are already learning how to use the bandsaw, how to use CAD in class as well.
We've had instances of where, in the upper grades, specific classes like the physics class or the 6th grade science class, they're working on a project and they need to come, the students from that class need to come down and use Makerspace, after school, or they make arrangements during the school day when there's a break in the engineering class. That has happened as well. I also wanted to point you to, you asked about STEAM curriculum in particular. If you go to the STEAM at Drew website, which I'll click on it here and take us there, if you look under the Our Work tab, you can go to the different grade levels and see what some examples of the programming looks like and what the STEAM curriculum, our teachers are writing it. And they're coming up with what they're doing. And I put it up the quarter after it happens. So 3rd quarter is getting ready to go up here, but you can see what the students are building and what they're making. And if you click on the image, it'll take you to the website where their projects are. So you can click under and find the different classrooms and see what they've been up to and what they've made. Now, we've been virtual most of the year, so most of this is going to be done virtually, but we prepared STEAM bags that went home with every student, so that students would still be able to do the same type of activities just at home. So in some cases, we sent home a glue gun with kids. So our PBLs are quarterly at the elementary academy. Some of our PBLs are longer at the high school and middle school level. But you can go and see some of the different PBL activities by grade level here as well, just clicking on some randomly. So you can see kind of what they're doing. This particular project that's featured here, they actually use the 3D printers, 3D printing trunk there. So, and then by senior academy, the work is broken out a little bit different. It's by class, and then the individual students have portfolios there that you can see some of the work that they're doing, like building sets with the construction trunk and things like that.
There was also the cool project it was with the 10th grade English class 2 years ago, and was it with the drama class? But they used the hummingbird carts, they used the arts and crafts carts, I know, and I think they used the construction carts. So, we do introduce our teachers to this at the beginning of the year, and we constantly, with some different cohorts, are constantly like reintroducing it to them, reminding them that these resources are there, and also trying to remind them like these resources aren't there to give you extra work, these are to help you and take something off of your plate so you don't have to reinvent the wheel and try to find materials or try to find ways to do this. I also realized something I left out of the sort of the getting started. I think a lot of people might find getting started really intimidating, but a lot of this makerspace movement came about sort of at the beginning of the internet as well. So there's plenty of resources online. As I said, you really only need like a pair of scissors and some scrap materials. But if you look on plenty of websites like Instructables and Boing Boing, what is it, like Hackaday, there's plenty of resources online. There's also a Facebook page for Makerspace managers run by Nation of Makers that's got like really good resources. Some are big picture questions, some of them are like fine detail, like nitty gritty, like how do I manage everybody's safety waiver. There's plenty of resources on here. Like you can just Google it and there will be so many things that'll pop up. Like our website might even be something that pops up. But we're not something that's alone with this. This is something that really anybody can do as long as they've got, you know, one or more people that's interested in making a makerspace and are motivated to do this.
So I pulled up our Instructables page because there's some problems or projects that you can do and try out there with your students. There are a couple of new questions, so I'm going to come back over to that. Suggested list of items needed if we were making a mobile makerspace. Monica, it depends upon the type. We decided very early on, we went back and forth on it. Do we put one of everything that we have, like one robotics kit, one glue gun, one, or do we go thematically? So that's the first thing you need to think about. Is do you want to go more thematic with it, or do you want to just put one of everything? We ultimately decided to go more thematic with it and then just allow people to check out as many of the trunks as they needed. And the reason why we decided to do that had a lot to do with, like, you know, having enough scissors for your whole class, or having enough glue bottles for your whole class, and you know, making sure that the 3D printing was huge, making sure if we had split the 3D printers up on different trunks, then it would have defeated the purpose of having a 3D printer trunk. You know, of having all of the 3D printers together makes maintenance easier and makes it much more efficient when printing out student projects. So there are on, I believe it's on this page here, when you go to our STEAM at Drew and then look under the resource tabs under STEAM trunks, there's a list of supplies, what's on each trunk. There's a downloadable list, so you can pull that and see what's on there. The trunks themselves were designed by our middle school students, and then executed by one of the faculty members' brothers, helped to get us started with building them, and then some dads took over. So that's, you know, I'm going to go to Courtney next. Have we had any projects come out of Makerspace that integrate the components from different grade levels? If so, how did you organize that? So one project comes to mind, and Colleen, you could talk about it. The lanterns. A variety of grade levels talk about light, transparency. So I'm thinking first grade, fourth grade,
Second grade,
fifth grade, with circuits. Yep. And then even on up into high school, we get a little bit more complicated with physics and physical science. So all, you know, there are multiple grade levels, light waves and things like that in 8th grade science. So it hits on multiple areas. So picking, you know, like the idea of designing lanterns. And this year we had a drive-through lantern parade where students made the lanterns, we hung them up on campus, and then a parade route came through the campus to see the lanterns. So that was an example of, you know, us picking something that had curricular ties to multiple grade levels and then executing that. And then Spencer, where would you suggest starting with grants for your first STEAM trunk? That's a great question, and I would say it kind of depends upon which STEAM trunk you want to do, because there are different organizations that sponsor different types of things. Like, let's say you were going to do something, you know, photography related. You might go through Best Buy. Best Buy has a grant every year for a certain amount of money. So it just depends, you know, I'm thinking about where we might go with our next STEAM trunk. We need to do something with audio visual. So that's on my brain right now, Spencer, but I'm, you know, you may have a variety of areas you want to go in, but that's the other reason why thematic trunks is a really good idea, because it's easier to get a sponsor for a specific trunk. Sometimes you can get a vendor like Radio Shack, before they closed up shop here in the Atlanta area, sponsored our electronics trunk. Like, they put most of the stuff that's on that trunk on there.
As with like modern electronics companies, I don't know if they would do a STEAM trunk sort of thing, but Spark Fun Electronics does sponsor projects at schools as well. So looking at companies like Spark Fun and Adafruit to do something like that as well. And then I know that Caitlin, our grants writer, she also has talked to like Home Depot before for the Makerspace grants, and Courtney can say some more about grants.
Yeah, so looking at organizations like Harbor Freight also has, if you have a Harbor Freight near you, you know, you could reach out to them. I know they will sponsor an entire, you know, class full of tools or whatever. But I think you can, you know, look at getting specific organizations to sponsor specific trunks, and that can help you reach your goals faster. And
Well,
I think Megan
we
has
want to
said
thank you. Yes.
to continue the conversation on the community forum. I am there every week checking for any questions that anyone might have. So if something comes to you later and you really, really want to know, I will post this video there and you can hit me back up at that point and say, hey, I had one more question, and I'll be glad to respond. It's been swell. You guys were had great questions.
And thank you so much, Courtney and Colleen, for this awesome session. And we thank you all so much for participating as well. Have an awesome evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.